if you do not take the ownership over 10 to 20 years of that lighting installation, you will not have the incentive to change the way you are developing your products. So it's that strong belief that as if manufacturers are not taking ownership through a C-LaaS model, we will never get to a circular economy.
Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into a new episode of the Product as a Service Champions podcast, aiming to eliminate the sense of being alone when navigating the Product as a Service landscape. I'm your host, Yann Toutant, guiding you through today's episode, and I'm very pleased to introduce our guest, someone who's at the forefront of transforming the lighting industry, Dominiek Plancke. Dominiek is the CEO of ETAP Lighting. Dominiek, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, well, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you today, Jan. Thanks for the invite. So indeed, I'm Dominiek Plancke. I'm the CEO of ETAP Lighting since November 2019. So actually, it's 5 years ago. So an interesting milestone because it allows me, of course, to look back as well as looking forward.
Of course.
And next year I will have another interesting milestone because I will turn 60.
Okay.
I'm married to Rita, have 2 children, Thomas and Astrid. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Great. Thanks, Dominiek. So ETAP has been a pioneer in energy efficient lighting for decades, way before you joined the company. But then there's been this transition to light as a service, C-LaaS, and it's mainly driven by your company commitment to the circular economy. Can you help us to see better what is the link between light as a service and the circular economy?
Yeah, I think that's a good opening question because the sustainability approach, how do we do governance of the company based on sustainable principles has always been in the DNA of this company. We are a family-owned company already for 75 years in the lighting industry. I can say we play in the Champions League of the lighting industry, so technical expertise always has been at the core, and innovation has been at the core of what the company has been moving forward. And indeed, if you look at the history, it started off by being obsessed about how can we bring comfort to the users. So comfortable ergonomics was very much at the heart. And then we had in the year 70 of last century, of course, the one big energy crisis. Then, of course, energy efficiency came to the forefront, and that was the challenge. So how can we keep comfort but at the same time being more and more energy efficient, right? So for people who are in lighting, they know that at a certain moment you create glare if you try to stretch the beam of the light. But of course, the more you can stretch the beam of the light, the less light you actually need to be put in. Because you use efficient optics. So there came already energy efficiency as being an enormous important driver, and it allowed the company to make a distinction with its competitors. And then you could say, yeah, indeed, when I joined, because before I was actually in the board of the company, so I took a type of reversed entrance. And normally you go from CEO to join the board. I did.
Indeed, it's not a traditional journey.
And but it was after a long talk also with Christel Joris, who is the chairwoman of ETAP. So what is going to be the next chapter? And I think it's important to underline this is for us feels very natural next step, but it's still a huge change. And I think later on we can maybe elaborate a bit on that. So, and it was stimulated by actually looking into maybe not the trends that are happening in the lighting industry, somewhat the trends that are happening in the construction industry, but especially what we call the 4 mega trends that we think is impacting everybody. First of all, European Union wants to be carbon neutral by 2050. If you then know that the construction industry is 35% of the carbon footprint, you can already imagine that there's a huge challenge ahead of us. And it means actually that we will need to renovate at a much higher pace. Times 2, times 3 is going to be the pace of renovation for the years to come. And there, out of that energy efficiency, we can contribute already a lot. We can allow our customers to reduce with 60 to 70% their energy consumption. So that's great.
That's significant.
And we thought if we do it in the same old way, we are going to have another issue. And that is that the natural resources that we are using in that massive renovation program is going to be depleted faster than they already depleting at this moment. So we really thought, if we do that whole effort in the traditional way, why can't we do it in the circular way? Why are we not challenging ourselves to renovate faster, but use less materials whilst we are going forward with that? And that's then very much linked to the whole circular economy, which is the second biggest mega trend that I think is going to impact all of us to rethink not throwing away material, but really doing another. And then you have, let's say, 2 other mega trends that are, I would say, auxiliary, influencing us, impacting us, but which also have been very inspirational. And the first one is actually that movement from ownership to usership. We see it happening in the consumer market. We see it more and more happening also in the professional market. And that stimulated us in our reflection around, so can we package that new offer to the market in another way? And therefore, we started off with circular light as a service. And for sure, we will talk more about that. And then the last trend is, of course, the whole digitalization, the Internet of Things, AI, you name it. This is, of course, also a mega trend. And it's those 4 that we actually have encapsulated in that, brand promise you see behind me, tomorrow's light. It's a little bit a play of words. It's tomorrow's light, so it's innovative. We will continue to innovate, and we will need to continue to innovate. But it's also, tomorrow will be light. It will have a light footprint. So all our innovations that we are doing, we want to do it in a way that the carbon footprint we leave behind is going to be as small as it can be. So, and we thought, maybe that play of words would be nice to put into that brand promise.
So you have been analyzing the driving forces on different markets, not only the lighting market, but the different markets, what you call those 4 mega trends, and you've integrated to create light as a service. And you don't stop there. You don't only call it light as a service, but you call it circular light as a service. So C-LaaS, circular light as a service. And it's a major focus for you. Could you explain how circular light as a service differs from traditional light as a service, which is very common in industry now, and how also this concept aligns with the European Green Deal?
It's linked to that purpose that we have as a company at the one side, because it's a conviction that if we are not keeping ownership of what our product is doing to our customers, we will never get the stimuli to think in other ways of how we develop our products. And if you think about it, I just give an example. For years, the idea within the lighting industry was a development philosophy of seal it for life. Make a product, let it last long, but we will seal it off so that no material, no dust, no water, whatever could enter. And for example, in industrial applications, and the best way is just seal it. Yeah, of course, if you think about circularity, that's the absolute wrong way to go ahead at it. But if you do not take the ownership over 10 to 20 years of that lighting installation, you will not have the incentive to change the way you are developing your products. So it's that strong belief that as if manufacturers are not taking ownership through a LaaS model, we will never get to a circular economy. So that's the, let's say, the more strategic, the more purpose-related part. So what does this now mean versus a normal light? A lot of LaaS projects, a lot of people, when we talk about it and you mention lighting as a service, they say, okay, yeah, that's that leasing of light. Well, guess what? We do circle lighting as a service with customers for whom we are not financing the solution because they don't need it. So that's not the essence. The essence is a performance agreement. What we are telling our customers is we are going to give you a guaranteed lighting level. You name the time. We go up to 20 years. And we will guarantee you an energy saving level all over that same light period. So you get what you actually search for, and that's light and energy savings. You actually do, you're not interested in what type of technology is behind it or what you want to see the results. So it's a promise. And just put then everything that you want to put on our shoulders to deliver on that promise. So yes, we offer installation, we offer the commissioning of the systems that we are using to monitor our light as a service, but also systems that allow to harvest daylight, to look at occupancy in rooms, and therefore is optimizing that as well. And we will, of course, make sure that during the whole lifetime of the installation over those 20 years, it's going to be maintained in a way that you get the results. Important to note is that in our offer, we don't only have general lighting, like for offices, industry, schools, hospitals, but we also offer emergency lighting. Emergency lighting has another dynamic because there the customer needs to show that that system will always function. Can't just own a building and then think, okay, in case of an accident or something happening, we will then see. No, you have a liability.
Yeah, it has to be tested. Yeah, it has to be tested on a regular
basis. So we also provide that service. So if you then think of, so what does it now mean for us? Well, we call it, we now design our products according to 3 pillars: endless, effortless, wasteless. It's not our invention. It's the Ellen McCartney Foundation principles. The best circular product is, of course, a product that lasts forever. Never falls down. Okay. In lighting terms, that means how do you keep the light level at its original level? People think LED that lasts forever. Well, they last a long time, but they lose a lot of light over the years. So you think I get a light level of 100%, but actually you quickly end up to 70% of that original light level. We manage that at -3, -5% over 50,000 hours. So actually it's the same level during a very long period of time. The second element is the effortlessness item. So how do you make sure your products are easily maintained? Can already imagine that if we want to maintain it over 15, 20 years, we better think twice on, for example, the type of sensors we are putting in. Because we will need to make sure that if a sensor breaks down, we can replace it also 10, 15, 20 years from now, as an example. And third, it's wasteless. Yes, we will look at using as much as possible the right recycled materials in our product, but especially at the end of life, can we dismantle our product easily? Can we reuse parts which are already still very good, etc.? And that thinking, actually, we took a step further. We said, we want to be circular and have an impact now. Thought about those natural resources. We can say, okay, well, in 20 years from now, when you dismantle it, you will do it in a circular way. So, and then we thought, but can't we refurbish the existing installations? Do you really need to sell every time a full new product, basically a lighting fixture? Or can we keep the existing lighting fixture in the ceiling? We take out the tubes, which are still there in the optics, and we put in a new module, which gives you that same light comfort, that same 70% energy savings, but you don't need to touch your ceiling. You can move faster. You know, we did it at customers, 1,100 light points being changed without anybody having basically to be moved out of the floor to another floor. Because you basically, well, okay, you have to put out the lights.
It's a question of minutes.
Don't do it during winter time in the evening. People still need some light to work. But frankly speaking, we just did it in less than a month at that customer, changing everything and without really being disruptive. So it pushes you truly towards another way of thinking.
What you mentioned, Dominiek, is something very, very common in the as-a-service industry, is that people still think leasing, because leasing is here for decades and it's the reference point, and people think leasing, oh yeah, as-a-service is leasing. And the answer is, it's not a payment plan. It's not a payment plan. It's much more than that. And I'm very happy you describe it, how you describe it. It's a performance-based model. It's an outcome-based model. No matter the technology, that's your responsibility to provide the right technology. And the user is going to buy a performance. And up to, as you mentioned, I would name it eco-design, that you produce knowing that this equipment has to have the longest life cycle, because it's not about selling units, it's about selling a performance. So you don't need to sell new products every year to make your target.
Yeah, exactly. And for the customer, it basically makes comparison much easier, because we talk about the total cost of ownership presentation versus I buy a product at a certain price. And it makes, actually for us also, it's somewhat easier to defend the quality because it's a more fair comparison. Because of course our products are more expensive than a lot of light products that you can find in the market. But look 5 years later on, what the result is going to be, and then you see, wow, yeah, if I only would have known it, maybe. Now I have to change back again and throw out a lot of material. But if you can compare it from the start, it's a fair comparison. Then still you need to be very competitive, but at least everything is being taken into consideration.
Yeah. And this directly leads me to a next question, because here we have this conceptual discussion, and it's easy in the warmth of the podcast.
Absolutely, a nice PowerPoint slide. You can already see it in front of you.
But when it comes to being in front of a customer, being the salesperson of ETAP, having to explain this transition to maybe a new persona, is it still the facility manager, or do you change persona in the organization when you have those discussions? So my question, Dominic, is how did you make this transition, mainly when it comes to sales team and helping your salespeople internally to adopt this service-oriented mindset?
Yeah. So one of the, and it's linked also to our values, which we nicely, of course, connected to the 4 letters of the company. So in the A, it's agility, and I think it's something basic. If you reflect on engaging on this journey, you will see that you will need to adapt continuously. Mm-hmm. You start off, you think, I'm going to organize it in such a way, and you recognize maybe not the right way. You think that certain persons you can retrain to be capable of doing the job. Guess what? Mm-hmm. Some it works, others it can't work, and you need to have new capabilities on board. Right? So to the topic of the engagement with the customer, it's of course a completely other sell. There's no, and do not underestimate that. I think that's the message. It's another sell. Then people immediately think about the content of what is being told. It's maybe even more about the person to whom you tell it, which is different. And that is, especially for salespeople, maybe the big change. They know a lot about our products. If you explain how they can pitch a total cost of ownership, how they pitch the contractual items, etc., that's the elements that can be more easily learned. The issue is that typically in a traditional way, they tell it to another person, then they need to tell it when they talk about a performance contract. Because, like I said earlier, it's about total cost of ownership. So the person that you have in front of you needs to be a person who is going to weigh out the purchase of the product, the energy costs that's going to be different, the maintenance costs. I said, for example, on emergency lighting, the risks associated with the badly maintained emergency lighting system, or the hassle that means when you need to make the documentation and the proof that you need to submit to external parties. Whatever it is, you talk about another person, another function, another level also in the organization. And that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges next to helping them to tell the content story. It's especially reaching other people that they are not used to reach, not used to engage with. That's a big change.
In the case of ETAP, could you share what type of new persona you have to reach out to offer a light as a service?
Yeah. So in the traditional model, you will work a lot already with the specifiers. Those are the consulting engineers, the lighting designers, the architects. There you give a service of helping them to make the specification, maybe making some lighting designs. So it's a very technical oriented, detailed norms, legislation type of storytelling. Of course, we were and always have been also in direct contact with end users, but it would have been typical the people out of the technical departments. With C-LaaS, those people who are primarily focusing on that axis, and we have invested in people doing only that as well, to help them making the bridge to the rest of the organization. They need to network. They need to be at events where there are people who are interested in sustainability, for example. They need to make sure that they get higher in the organization. okay, I will not talk about necessarily talking to the CEOs of the companies, but at least the people who own the complete facility management part, or the head of production, operations, more the business related people than the pure technical execution related people. And unfortunately, for sure, not the guy from the purchasing department who comes in at the end.
Of course.
And in the reality is what it is, but typically is only interested in, do I get an extra 5% off? But that's not the person that you pitch such a solution towards.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
And now that's the part of the I would call it the private segment. And I forgot, of course, we also have the public authorities, where you have a complete public tendering process. But okay, that's still another game. We can maybe also elaborate on that maybe later on, but that also is requiring another way to making sure that the tender specification that is going to be put out is on the back of the principles of a circular light as a service, and not just a purchase of a product.
Yeah, indeed. There's a lot of education to be done in both private and public sector, but in public sector, due to the tender process, you can only answer how the tender has been designed. So it's important.
If I would have it as a one-liner, it's about accessing the right people, which is the biggest shift.
Yeah. Once you've succeeded in selling it, it comes, of course, naturally the aspect of the operations, which is an important component into a subscription model, because you have a monthly or a quarterly payment. So if the operations are not at the expected level, you might have a customer that will stop paying for the services. Yeah. So there is this ongoing need of delivering value. So operations are crucial. And I know that within ETAP, you invest 7% of your revenue into research and development every year. And you have also implemented what you call QRM, quick response manufacturing. So could you share with us what is this QRM principle? What is the contribution of this principle into the operations of C-LaaS?
Yeah, I think it's okay if we now talk about lean, QRM, agile, whatever the terminology.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, having that focus on the renovation market, wanting to refurbish, it puts the bar on how do you customize for the right ceiling. Because our products end up in a ceiling, and the one ceiling it's not the same as the other one.
Yeah, indeed.
You immediately come to a customization question. Secondly, we are in the project business, so the aspect of how do you engineer to order and manufacture for that with very fast or let's say short lead times. That's something that is really differentiating ourselves from our competitors, is requiring that you have an operations, and I took a really look at the wider spectrum of what it means, of capturing and understanding how does that current installation look at a customer, over how do we design then the solution to fit, over making sure that ends up in production and is being delivered to the customer at the right time. So it's continuously looking there at maximizing platform utilization, and so it actually starts in R&D solution to allow production, but also our purchasing department to be ready with the right components and let's say the right tools of assembly to actually then also make the product for the customer. And out of that comes then, of course, the whole thinking around quick response manufacturing, lean setups, and making sure that high diversity with which that we are having to deal with is translated into an efficient and fast production setup.
Very clear, and I think that brings me to another topic. It's a common aspect into as a service model is to have the service being delivered by not only yourself but by an ecosystem of providers that you bring on the silver plate to the end user. Could you give us a glimpse of what is the ecosystem that ETAP has organized to deliver C-LaaS?
It's a good item. It's actually, again, one of our values. Is the P of partnerships.
Okay.
I mean, you can't do this on your own. You know, it's silly even to try to do everything yourself and then thinking you can be the best in everything. Of something that is, of course, from what you provide to the customer, quite complicated. It's financing, it's making lighting designs, it's making investment dossiers, it's installing it, it's commissioning it, it's maintaining it, etc.
It's huge.
Already from that perspective, having an open mindset and thinking in terms of partnerships is extremely important. But then it's not the only reason, it's also the market reality. I already mentioned the fact that we don't necessarily finance all our C-LaaS proposals. If a customer says, I can search, okay, I can find my money cheaper than what you can offer. For example, we did a very big building. We're still executing on it in Belgium of one of the municipalities. The government is not looking to us to,
of course,
to find.
Luckily. Hopefully.
Okay, some do, some don't. But anyhow, that's it. We don't do that. But the same holds. One of our big customers that we are working with is ArcelorMittal, for example. Okay, those are kind of industrial sites, terrains on which that only qualified installers, subcontractors are going to enter. They are not willing to change because we are coming there with a solution to have yet another installer company that has to go through the whole certification process. So also there, it's about then, leveraging what works for them. We now have a discussion that is going on with a technical school where with whom we already have done some C-LaaS projects, and they said, wow, but could we not involve our students? Do the installation, etc. So we take there a very open mindset of, so what works best for the customer? Now, that being said, you as expert in this field know this very well. De-risk with services is that you don't standardize. So when you then scale,
of course,
it goes all directions. And so therefore, we are looking at ways to make sure that it is a combination of pieces of a jigsaw that we bring together, but it will always be the same set of pieces. So we try every element to be as standardized as possible, but still allowing the customer to look around. Now in the lighting industry, to one of the big changes that we had to do, and that has to do also with the partners, Yann, is of course that in the old model, whilst we have been busy working with the specifiers to get our product specified, it would be in the end an electrical installer who is actually buying the products from us.
Oh yeah, okay.
Now in the C-LaaS model, actually they are our partners, subcontractors.
Uh-huh.
So, and that always also has been, and is still ongoing, quite a change,
Mm-hmm.
um, because both parties get another role, and
Mm-hmm.
it is not well thought through from a partnership perspective. Yeah, it just doesn't work. Eh?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a selection process. Some of those installing companies, they know what's happening. They see the fantastic opportunity in it as well. And we want them to deliver top-notch quality, because
Mm-hmm.
if they don't do, we and in the end are sitting with the risks. Eh?
Indeed.
So that's also why we recognize the value that they bring to the party. And we don't see this as, okay, this is the moment to squeeze you completely. Uh, and then, because then we know on the short term, yeah, we win some.
Mm-hmm.
But over the longer term, we will not have the quality partners that we also need and search for. Um, so yes, it's a partnership game. Um, don't underestimate that part of this new business model.
Mm. It's the challenge of having a model that goes through a distribution channel and having now to have a direct contact with the end user, but still onboarding the distribution channel in the delivery of the services is a very common question we have when it comes to implementing as a service when there is an existing indirect model. And I'm very happy to hear that you have been able to succeed in shifting the relation with some of your distributors or resellers to include them into the as a service model that you're implementing.
Yeah, I want to clarify a little bit. If you look at the lighting market and you would talk about distribution model, then it would be basically a business that runs over the wholesalers
Mm-hmm.
to the installers who install the product.
Yeah, okay.
ETAP already had a predominantly what we would call direct sell, in the sense that we have those end users also that we are, talking and engaging with. We have the installers who are doing the installation work, and we had the specifiers. But it was more that the installer would be the customer
Installers.
and is now the supplier. So for us, that shift is a little bit less than I can imagine for a lot of other players who do 80% of their business via wholesale, for example.
Exactly. Yeah. But still you've done the shift with the installers then.
Absolutely.
With the installers that became supplier of your complete as a service solution as part of the ecosystem.
And I think there, the one thing maybe or message is, if you continue to think about customer supplier relationship, it will never work. If you think about partnership, then it works. But you need to get out of that modus of, I buy from you and I supply to you.
Yeah.
If you don't, and there's still a lot of installing companies in the market who have that position, and there's still a lot of manufacturers who say, yeah, maybe now it's our moment to be the demanding customer and push the price down. Think in terms of partnerships.
That's a model that has worked for decades already. So true, it's challenging to change it and to be visionary and to say, look, this model is reaching its end. Talking about being visionary, you have already a significant percentage of your turnover into C-LaaS projects. How do you see that expanding? How do you see the model scaling? What is your ambition there?
Yeah, and it's interesting to say, because while it's already has its weight, geographically, it's still quite concentrated. Because we on purpose said that out of that scaling issue, that let us not try to learn everywhere where we are. Let's learn at one place, fine-tune the model, the offer, look at, okay, what works well, what does not work well, and then start to scale. And so we are now in several countries, let's say, moving, but it's still for a large degree concentrated to our home market. But I think I would also, if somebody who is listening in starts from scratch, I would really recommend that. Do it in a controlled environment to get the learning, because you can, in all your enthusiasm, have a lot of waste, because the learning curve is steep. It's not going to happen overnight, and you will need to adapt on a continuous basis. So how do I look towards the future? Well, it's of course geographically now scaling it, because we have executed on C-LaaS in every individual segment that we are present. We have C-LaaS projects with emergency lighting, we have C-LaaS in hospitals, we have C-LaaS in offices, we have C-LaaS in industry, sports halls. So every segment we are present at, we know it works in the private market as well as in the public tender market. So now we are really ready for the next phase of scaling, while understanding that every market is different. You don't,
of course,
but that's okay. That's a matter of fact.
Yeah, and it's about proving the value. We hear a lot people talking about POV instead of POC. The proof of concept is becoming a proof of value. POV, proof of value, where you're able to demonstrate the value of the solution for the entire ecosystem, including the user, and that makes it a cornerstone to be able to scale and to
absolutely
from your learnings to be able to industrialize and scale the model.
I have noted this one down. I never thought about the proof of value.
Proof of value. Yeah.
I think it's a good description, and indeed, that's the initial search. And in every segment, you will have those early adopters. Right? In our case, because it's circular light as a service, it's also very much those leading companies out of, we need to do something here. The traditional way of linear has to stop, and those people embrace it first, and they inspire others to follow, and that takes time as well. So I think that's also an element. Be patient. Or I would say it another way, you need to be committed in this for the long run. I've also seen examples of, okay, we go, because it's very sexy as a service. So we also an as a service solution. People will see very quickly what is behind that. So it's a long-term commitment, and then you need to drive it as hard as you can, of course.
I would love to continue this discussion because we have so much in common. Of course, we want to keep it short and simple for our listeners. So I, unfortunately, going to drive us to a conclusion, and that will be my last question for you, Dominiek. It's the following one: if we were to be able to take a time machine and go back 5 years in time and meet yourself 5 years ago, what would be your advice about your C-LaaS journey to the Dominiek of 2019, 2018, 2019?
Yeah, that's of course a challenging question. I think it would. I think it would be even more of being conscious that the road on which you're engaging on is not going to be a straight road. And whilst instinctively, and also that, and because a lot of people are telling you that as well when you talk about these type of approaches, still when you put things into practice, you assume too quickly, I have found the way. I think that's one. And secondly, at least for our case, because it's a circular light as a service, it's a full company transformation. There's no department not being touched here. From marketing, who has to help our sales to find the right contacts, and just to give an example, of course, the financing department, who needs to think in other terms, with new challenges. How do you build that with your banks? And it's in manufacturing, like I told you, development for R&D, it was a completely overhaul to think in circular terms. We made a white paper on how to design from a circular perspective. In sales, we elaborated on that a lot. And I think whilst you're writing that plan out, and I've done in my career a lot of transformations, so it's not like I did not know that. Still, that move towards a service, it's heavy lifting. Do not embrace that. So in a nutshell, how you bring that back to focused improvements, but that we focused on our home market. But that, I think, is something that I would like to bring as a message. It's going to be an enormous transformation. You will need to touch so many stones. How do you now avoid to be overwhelmed? So focus is going to be the key. And agility, learn from it. Don't think it's going to be completely worked out, that it's going to be perfect. Forget it. You will need to test it out. You will need to find a model that works for you. I think that's what I learned very much during those 5 years. That it's, like you said earlier, the theory, the presentation on one PowerPoint, the game plan is written out. Is what the game plan after a few years is going to look completely different.
That's what we know for sure.
Because it shows that you have learned and you have adapted and you have moved on.
We always say what we know for sure is that the plan we have designed will not be what the real life will bring. That's for sure.
That's for sure. But it's not. But accept it. It's not bad. Just know that this is going to be the case. I think is the message.
And I appreciate, of course, the fact that you mentioned the holistic view and impact on the whole company, while keeping it focused in order to not get overwhelmed by the complexity you can create and the magnitude you can create. So there's a there's a very good balance to find between keeping the holistic view and being into the implementation and the proof of value, as I was saying before.
And actually, when we have presentations with our customers, actually we always end up or end with, join us on this journey. Because that's also a message I want to give. I do not want to give here the impression like, we are here the experts, we have found it, we are there. Absolutely not. I think there's still a lot that we can do, a lot that we can learn. And it's a journey towards full circularity, like we then call it. We are very open from our partners to learn what works well and not. So it's a continuous.
It's a never-ending learning curve, indeed. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Dominiek, for this last advice, but also overall for the discussion we just had and demonstrating how circularity and as a service could be combined and that they synergize each other to help to have a better impact on the environment, the next generation, but also better serve the users. So it's a win-win-win approach that you described to us.
Well, anyhow, thanks again, Yann, as well for inviting me, and also thanks to organize this, because I think while it's growing in as a service model, let's be honest, we are still in the early adopting phases. A lot still can be done, especially in the professional market and in the construction business, where we play a small role in.
Well, thanks for these conclusion words, and I'm sure that our listeners will take a lot from the conversation we just had. And to all our listeners, if you're exploring the product as a service landscape and need some guidance, of course, don't hesitate to reach out or visit the blackwinch.eu website. Thank you again, Dominiek, for today.
Yeah.
And for the audience, see you in the next episode.